Welcome to the most important week of the year for the podcast industry. Welcome to Podcast Movement 2025.
Hi, everyone. Welcome to the Quill and co-host stage. Nope. Can you guys, if you have headphones, you might have headphones on. You can probably only hear me if your headphones on. Switch to green. Okay, perfect. All right. So hi, everyone. Welcome. I'm Quincy DeVries. I'm the head of content production at Quill. We're an award-winning branded podcast agency, as well as co-host, which is a podcast analytics and audience insights platform for brands and agencies. So thank you so much for joining us. This is our second panel of the day. We're here for one day and one day only. So if you want insights from this stage, make sure to stick around. We have some great panels happening today. But this panel in particular is one I'm excited for, Beyond the Ad Read, Building Brand Creator Partnerships That Perform. So we all know listeners can spot a generic ad read from a mile away. We've all been there. So how do we create those ad reads that really resonate and those ad reads that really convert? Well, I'm excited to say you've got the perfect group of panelists here today to help answer that question. So I'm going to introduce them. When I introduce you, if you can give the so everyone knows who you are, amazing. So just Katie is the Media Planning Director at Ad Results Media.
Hi, everybody.
We're also joined by Janine Wright. She's an audience growth expert and board advisor at Quill and co-host. Brian Conlan, he's the president, at DAX US. We have Tamara, I'm so sorry if I mispronounced your last name right now, Tamara Zutabi Nelson, is that right? Almost? Okay. CEO and co-founder of Barometer, and you have a fantastic moderator here with you today, who's Marcia Fisher. She's the VP of Partnerships at AudioStack.ai. So with that, I'll hand it over to Marcia and enjoy the discussion today, everyone.
Okay, let's get started. We are going to do some audience participation. So by a quick show of hands, how many of you have heard a podcast that genuinely made you want to learn more, click, or buy something? Raise your hands. Great. That's the emotional spark that brings us here today. It's about authenticity meeting impact. So in fact, eMarketer just came out with a recent study, and it shows 22% of monthly podcast listeners report making an immediate purchase after hearing an ad within the past 6 months. That outpaces other mediums and platforms, including social like YouTube and TikTok. Now, how many, by show of hands again, have heard that ad that fell flat, that was not inauthentic? Perfect. So that's the gap that we're going to be talking about today. What works, what doesn't work. Now, we've already introduced our panel, so we can actually just kind of get right into it. So, Katie, you are helping brands find the right podcast creators to partner with. What are the most important factors for successful brand creator fit beyond download counts and demographics? What should brands actually be looking for to ensure authentic audience alignment that converts?
That's a great question. I think that at Ad Results, that's something that we work with brands every day in terms of looking for those authentic connections and really finding those audiences that will help convert for brands. And a lot of that is done through different factors like understanding, creator authenticity. So you really want to partner with a creator that has the ability and that true connection to a brand, that they're maybe already consumers, or maybe they are looking to be consumers because they have recommendations or have gotten recommendations from colleagues or friends in the space. So really having that true creator authentic connection can help drive that brand value and ultimately speak to your audience as a whole. I think what's also really important is understanding your audience. As you just said, it goes beyond demographics. It really needs to go into understanding your audience's mindsets and their behaviors. As a brand, you need brands to be thinking about, why these listeners are showing up in the podcasts that they are. Is it because they share values with those creators that they choose to tune into? Do they have similarities in their lifestyles? What is resonating with them most and bringing them to those podcasts versus, showing up in a podcast somewhere else? I think that once you have those two connecting factors, you're really able to drive through brand results overall, especially in terms of conversions. You know, at Ad Results, we look a lot at CPA, ROAS, and we're really able to drive through those strong conversions for brands once we make that connection between a creator and their authentic connection to the brands because they're consumers, but B, also the audience that is tuning in. You know, we really drive that trust there. You get that emotional alignment. And once that comes through, those conversions will happen and we'll see audiences start making those purchases. You can start driving brand loyalty, you know, driving recommendations and all of that through.
Perfect. Janine, your experience scaling partnerships at you have experience scaling partnerships at major podcast networks. What happens when brand creator alignment misses the mark? How do you protect both the show's creative integrity and the brand's objectives?
Yeah, I mean, so what happens when things go wrong? When things go wrong on the brand side, I mean, you essentially spend a lot of time churning your wheels with brands that end up not converting and they don't come back. And so then you're finding new brands for new show all the time. And it can be very exhausting, can really be tough on the team, on the show. It can be tough on the audience, right? So, and it can damage your relationships with all of the major ad sellers if you have essentially content that is not performing to their return on investment expectations for investment in the show. And on the creator side, it can be really jarring and really disruptive to the authenticity that you're trying to develop with your audience, right? The best kinds of ad reads are the ones that read like your best friend is giving you a recommendation for something that they love, right? And when it feels like your best friend is trying to force something on you that you wouldn't want, or that they're like, wait, you know me, why would you try to sell me that? It can really impact like the trust that you have with your audience, and you start seeing negative creator feedback in your forums. You start seeing negative reviews on your shows, right? So you have to both protect from the brand perspective and the creator community perspective that you're trying to build.
I think to just also add to that, which is a great point, is that, you know, you have your creator talking about the brand, a brand that they believe in. If they can weave it into the style and the tone of the actual podcast, it's really able to reach those audiences that are ultimately trusting their creators.
And I mean, having worked with, some incredible actors turned podcasters, you can still tell when they don't believe in something, right? When they're faking, loyalty or authenticity or actual use of a product, you can tell, right? It really falls flat.
What about when you have a podcast that has several hosts, right? And one of them uses that product, and that person is not there for a read or whatever, and you've got the other hosts kind of stepping in. How do you fix that? Like, how do you make sure that there's that authenticity there?
Yeah, you can script all sorts of things in ways so that, you can talk about something that, you've fallen in love with because somebody that has fallen. Like, I talk about things all the time that, my husband is a super fan of, or that my kids use. So even though I'm not personally the one who uses it and endorse it, like I can appreciate and recommend something that I have seen be really advantageous for somebody that I know and love. And so you find all sorts of different ways to script it in a way that feels very authentic, to the host, and can still maintain the trust of your audience, right? Perfect. And when brands ask for you to do something different, that's when you negotiate the pushback and the advocacy for your audience, like what will resonate best with your audience. And I found that most brands in the space and most agencies in the space, they're very sophisticated. They've been doing this for a long time. Like, when you push back and advocate for your audience and what's going to work for your audience, they listen now. Maybe at the beginning they didn't listen so much, but they listen now.
This next one's for Brian. Brian, Dax is pushing boundaries with programmatic efficiency and authentic host reads. How do you keep that human connection that we were just talking about intact while scaling across multiple creators and campaigns? What innovations are making that balance easier?
I got the dead mic, so lucky me. For us, we are an audio sales organization, right? So we access content across streaming audio, podcasting, and in-game. So we have to make it easier for advertisers to come into the market and test and learn across our podcast inventory. And in order for that to be working successfully, we have to be constantly innovating with the latest technology in the space to offer our clients something unique that's not currently available. So I think for us, over the past 2 years, we've partnered with Barometer and Sounder for brand suitability and brand safety to allow big brand advertisers the comfortability factor of coming into a podcast space where years ago they didn't want to buy a network of podcasts because it was uncomfortable of the where my ad's going to run. I don't have control over that. So we've seen a lot of success with that tool coming to the table to our advertisers and supply partners, aggregating that together for brands. But the thing we're most excited about is we've just recently launched the PPN product with Frequency, which is host reads at scale through an automated platform. We feel there's a very big hole in the market right now when it comes to host reads because host reads require human bandwidth for reading the scripts, inserting them into the commercials, into the episodes, reporting back on that post-campaign. And there's been a hole for that middle to long tail creator where they built sizable audiences for their podcast, but they can't offer host reads to their listeners because these big networks can't service them at scale, right? So Frequency has built a tool which allows hosts to come in, read their script, automate the insertion on the back end so we can bring a full network to advertisers of host reads that'll enable that human connection to align with shows that they want to be in, and we can do that through an automated fashion to make it more efficient on the front end of the campaign. So we're really excited about that. We feel like with this tool, it's going to be able to unlock more dollars in the host reads side of things because we do see that host reads leads to better return on investment. You can have that engagement with the brand where they're actually telling the story of the commercial versus the generic brand spot running there. So this is the next evolution in the podcast space, and we're really excited to be bringing that to the table.
This one's for Toma. Toma, Barometer goes far beyond surface level brand safety box checking. Brian was just talking about how he's working with Barometer as well, how Dax is working with Barometer. How can analyzing tone, sentiment, and emotional style help predict whether a partnership will truly perform? And how often does that deeper context change a brand's decision?
Yes, this is such a great question, and such an honor to be up here with such amazing legends talking about the most important reason that we're all here, which is that creator brand alignment. So the way that Barometer helps to deliver that alignment, I would say, is in two main ways. The first is content alignment, and then the second is the creator alignment. So from a content perspective, that's where our contextual analysis is really helpful. So we're looking at the tone, the context, and everything that's being discussed to really understand what is this show talking about. This goes a lot more deep than like a genre, for example. Genre might be like society and culture. With Barometer, you can find out like this person is talking about healthy food all the time and would be a great partner for like a vegan brand, but maybe not the best partner for a McDonald's. Conversely, you might find that they're actually talking about McDonald's quite a bit, and then that would be a great alignment partner for a McDonald's. But like, I think one way to reframe the concept of brand suitability for this context is to think about it in terms of that alignment, where every brand's definition of what is an ideal contextual alignment is totally different. And it can be really hard to try to locate that across an increasingly expanding universe of podcasts. So to be able to just put in like, I'm looking for creators that are talking about this, this, and this, and then be able to find those people, that's an immediate kind of first step. Now, the next step is better understanding who that creator is. And so we talk to a lot of agencies, and they spend a lot of time Googling the hosts, looking them up on Reddit, enter name of the host plus controversy in ChatGPT. All of that is happening all the time, and I think it's a non-trivial part of being able to provide that confirmation that, in fact, the host is not only talking about the content that resonates with your ad, but also is who they say they are. 99% of the time they are. And I think together, Barometer really makes it easier for the validation and the vetting of that. And then finally, it's worth noting that while the campaign is actually running, of course, you're measuring your conversion data, but you can also be monitoring to make sure that the contexts in which your ad is being placed or is being talked about are continuing to reinforce that alignment that you were seeking. So you can double check, like in this episode, are they talking about the health food or are they talking about McDonald's? And that verification, the trust but verify aspect, is another really important part of how Barometer can kind of help confirm and validate that the alignment is actually working.
What other ways, maybe this is for you, Katie, are you using tools like a barometer or like frequency in order to play back into the campaigns and look at success of the campaign?
Yeah, definitely. I think that everything that Tamara said about Barometer in terms of how we can look into brand suitability and understand that a creator, just what you said, may make sense for McDonald's, may not make sense for them, is one way that we automatically will use tools like that to really ensure that, if a brand is moving into a certain space, we want to ensure that the creator genuinely aligns to it. I think that in terms of looking for also audiences, we have tools like Podscribe, that we have the opportunity to go into and look into different audience mindsets, behaviors, who they are, what they're listening to, maybe some type of similar content, and then really hone in from there and be able to find a creator's universe and how the brand will fit.
And I guess too, maybe I can speak to some of the tools that some of the creators should be leveraging. And many of you in the audience, I imagine, are at the very beginning of your journey in trying to find a brand creator partnership. Maybe you haven't had your first ad read yet, right? So I guess I would say, if you are not leveraging AI to help you find your brand partnerships and make your pitches, then I think that you're missing out on that opportunity and you're working too hard. So you could be doing things like, you could take your show description, your last 3 transcripts of your last episodes, and paste those into AI. And you could say, find me 50 brands that would be good partners for my brand. Then you could say, compare that, cross-check that against a list of the top 100 brands that advertise in whatever genre that you're in regularly in podcasting. You could create that into a CSV that includes all the contact information for those folks. You could tell it to draft for you an example of what an ad read for each of those brands might look like. And then you can just start practicing and start making ads for brands for free, for ones that look authentic to you, recording them and including them as part of your pitch to these brands as to what you can do for them and why that resonates with your audience. You can also ask for, what are the brands that are advertising in lookalike shows? These are the shows that are most like mine. And what kinds of scripts might I use that would be like these have done in some of your favorite shows? You can say, do this in the genre of a host-read ad that I might find in This American Life, right? And that just gives you lots of creative opportunities to experiment and find your authentic voice in partnering with some of these brands. And we have found for early stage creators or independent creators, practicing, fake it until you make it, doing some of these brands for free. I mean, one, increases your reputation with your own audience. You'll see good positive reinforcement feedback from your audience of oh, they're big time now. They've got ads in the show for the first time, right? And then it also demonstrates and makes it less likely for you to be considered a total newbie risk when you're pitching yourself to some of these brands to partner with, because they can hear examples of things that you have done in your show. So definitely be leveraging AI and just starting to practice and find things that are working for you and your audience before you go in cold and meeting with some of these brands to get your partnerships done.
Just to piggyback off that, I think that's a great point, because to me, there's more technology in the space now more than ever, which provides safety for brands to test and learn. I think some of the things we've seen at DAX and working with partners like Barometer is you go to a brand and say, okay, what is your brand suitability measures? And they say, I don't want this, I don't want that. And then you have to question them with the why, because I think they automatically want things to be blocked. And I think Tamara and I talk about news. It's been a topic where we don't want to run in news for the last 8 or 9 years. It's been a genre that does not allowed.
We don't even want to listen to the news.
Yeah, we don't want to listen to the news, but again, that used to be one of the best DR genres in the space when I first came into the market. Like, it's been blacklisted because of the controversial topics, but using partners like a barometer, you can now enter that space with a safety net, per se, and test and learn. I think that's a big thing for podcasting is everyone has a podcast now. There's more content out there, but those listeners and audiences have value for brands, and I think sometimes they come to the table with a perceived notion of where they want their ads to run because they want to be in these big shows. But there's a lot of value in the middle tier community of content creators. And I think we just need to see more expansion of that as we continue to grow this marketplace.
Wait, I have to piggyback off of that because you guys know me, I'm so passionate about this topic, about news. And one of my favorite recent discoveries about this topic and this area is the audience of news junkies. So raise your hand if you've already heard about the audience of news junkies. Ooh, okay, cool. So this is a really exciting audience. So news junkies tend to be richer. They tend to be more educated. They tend to not watch or listen to sports or to entertainment. And so they're essentially unreachable unless you're in the news. And so it's super common, as Brian said, for brands to come in and by default kind of be news averse. And then we have to chat with them and talk about well, what audience are you trying to reach? And then as soon as you start talking about it in terms of that audience alignment, it becomes clear that it's oh, well, this audience is checking the news 7 times a day and they're not checking sports at all. And so if you really do want to reach them, there's kind of only one path, but how do you do that in a way that's approachable for you? And so I feel that's been one of our most important initiatives is to provide brands some of that comfort so you can get immediate feedback. You don't just have to trust, but you can always say ooh, maybe this episode isn't the perfect alignment for me, but without throwing away that entire audience and without being basically biased about your own audience. Your audience will tell you exactly where they are, and it's kind of our job to listen.
Toma, you read my mind and exactly what I was going to say. It's really just about finding your audience and where to align to it. That's a great point.
Perfect. We want to make sure that we have time for questions. So we'll just close out the round. I appreciate everybody's feedback. But we will leave everybody with a little bit of something concrete from the panel here. So I would like everybody to share one partnership success story that amplifies what we've discussed, or give an actionable nugget for campaign success. Start with Katie.
That's a good one. Actionable nugget for campaign success, I think, is exactly what we just talked about. We need to find where our audience is. And while that may be in content that we're not necessarily looking to show up in, it's where our audience is engaging. And where our audience is engaging is where we're going to find brand conversions. So we really want to make sure that we're showing up there. I mean, we've seen the data that says about 80% of listeners trust the recommendations that they hear from their content creators, from their trusted creators. It's almost like a friend's recommendation. You want to listen to that. You're choosing to listen to that. And I think that we're only going to continue to see such positive performance like that if we continue to lean into spaces where audiences are really tuning in.
Yep. Piggybacks off of Janine's it's a friend recommendation.
Yep,
Yeah,
exactly.
I mean, where I've seen some of the best. Is this on? Yeah. Where I've seen some of the best successes over the last few years have been opportunities where the creator has initiated, these are the brands that I really love. I love Cheez-Its. I love General Mills. I love Rothy's. I love, these are the things that I buy. These are the brands that I endorse. And then playing that matchmaker role of then reaching out to some of those brands and being you might not know this, but, Sean Hayes is a huge fan of Cheez-Its. I mean, he's eating them all the time. You guys have to get in the show, right? Or, oh my gosh, he's wearing this all the time, or he is, this is when they did back to school shopping, right? And so we used to have a lot of our creators essentially just walk around with a little notepad or do it in the notes in their phone. Just every time you engage with a brand that you find that brand resonates with you, write it down, because maybe that's a great opportunity for an authentic brand read or brand partnership with that brand in the future.
It's a great point.
I think for me, all of these have been amazing points. We should be taking notes. And I think
AI can help with that.
yes, AI can help with that, as Janine said. Um, so I would say my takeaway is probably we're all making too much money. Like this industry has gotten too big, and these brands are spending a lot of money. It's too much to be making decisions based on vibes. You need to be making decisions based on data. And that includes conversion data, that includes contextual data, that includes audience data. All of those are essential components to interpreting what's actually happening and then continuing to make those data-driven decisions that drive brand success.
I'll give you a two-parter to finish it off. I think the first one is brands and creators need to establish trust. If you're working with a creator, you're doing it for a reason because you want to be in that show. You know that they prove results for other brands. So it's about letting them have creative freedom with that copy points that you're sending to them and just let them make it their own. And then part two of that is consistency. I think that's one thing we talked about is like, how do you feel like it's a genuine host read? It's something that you're doing a long-term partnership with the show and you're actually allowing them that creative freedom to resonate with their listeners, but having that consistency. Don't drop in for one episode, come back in 3 months, because again, you're just going to be lost in one of many at that point. You need to be at the forefront in the episodes. When people hear that show, they always remember that that sponsor is present, right? So I would say that would be the two things I would leave as nuggets.
Yeah, I have a funny story about that just quickly. When we had the SmartList podcast at Wondery, we had a bank working with the team, and they did a funny, ad read that we felt like really went above and beyond, just like riffing off of the relationship with the bank. We presented it back to the banking partner, and they said, we love everything about it except for that they use the word shit. So we'd like them to re-record it just like that. We want them to re-record it, but we want them to take out this. And can they change this one little part and change this one? And I was like, you don't understand the gold that you got,
Yeah.
right? Or the partners that you're working
changes
with,
the
right? It's like, and to go back to them and be like, hey guys, remember how you did that really fun thing about that bank? Do it one more time, except they've got some notes, like that. That's not going to be a good
It takes
read,
away
right?
from their creative authenticity.
And thankfully, I mean, not to give you a plug, but now with tools like, Audio Stack AI, you could just edit out the shit.
You can. We can change that really quickly. We've got about 2 minutes. So we'll open up the floor to questions. Anybody has a question? We're ready?
Hello? Can you hear me?
Yes.
Yeah.
Okay, cool. So if you're a creator and you're starting to build a following and you feel like you have a partnership or a brand that aligns with your content and you said to reach out to them, what is the best way to sort of reach out, I guess, or the most effective way or any sort of recommendation that you have?
Yeah. I mean, like I said, I think that that's a great opportunity for AI to help you. I think if you take tomorrow's advice and you start to lean into your data, you know your audience best, right? Like, what do you think the demographics of your data are like? What kind of reach are you getting, right? Why do you think that this brand is going to resonate? Like, do you see any inklings of brand affiliation in your community groups, right? And then you can ask AI to help you essentially put together a pitch email and some pitch materials. And then there's lots of publicly available information for reaching out to these folks. Some of them have general inboxes that you can send to. And you can leverage AI to help you get contact information for those. And you can reach out to them directly, or if you know that they're represented through an agency, you can reach out to the agency. And I know it feels weird to do that, and it's a little bit like fishing, so you're gonna have to do a number of these before you're gonna get some traction. And if you can send to them, for example, hey, and here's a couple of versions of what a potential ad read looks like, I think that can be really compelling too, right? That can show your professionalism and that they could trust you to actually deliver on the brand. And then you just start to send it out and be super responsive when you get stuff. But you'd be surprised, people are always hunting for the next show that's gonna work. I mean, these folks have been advertising in the same shows for many years, and some of them have experienced a lot of saturation in those shows already with that audience. Everybody who's listened to this sports show is probably already signed up for DraftKings, right? And so maybe DraftKings is looking for the next audience, a virgin audience that they can reach, and maybe that's your show. And so they are willing to do a lot of experimentation with professional independent creators.
We have time for one more question.
I'm curious about the barrier of which certain brands look to advertise, like what your impressions are, what your subscribers are, your followership, your footprint across your. Can you hear me? Okay.
I think you were asking the question around like what are certain kinds of thresholds that you need to
Right.
reach in order to be compelling for like your first big brand partnerships?
With the caveat of certain.
Brian to the rescue! Woo!
Oh.
There you go.
Okay, with the caveat that certain shows are going to be niche, right? So not general audience. So let's say a show about genetics, about cancer research or something like that. That's going to be really niche that appeals to, those who want to go into clinical trials and drug manufacturers. Those numbers might be smaller than a general market, audience.
Yeah, I mean, I'll let Katie speak in just a minute to kind of what their general thresholds are. But I mean, I will tell you the highest CPM, which is like the price that you get per 1,000 downloads that I've ever seen, was on a show that was for type 2 diabetes, right? For people who had type 1 diabetes. And they had made a relationship with a drug manufacturer, a test kit, deliver, like they knew their audience and what was going to be compelling to their audience, and those brands were willing to pay for that particular niche audience to reach them, and were willing to pay very high CPMs for a relatively small audience. So if you can find that sweet spot, that ideal matchmaking between the brand and the creator, then I think that it almost doesn't matter what size your audience is. But
I
yeah.
think you just hit the nail on the head with that,
Yeah.
because I don't want to say niche, but if you do have a smaller audience, but you have a really engaged, or a smaller following, I should say, but a really engaged audience that's tuning into your podcast, ultimately that's the audience that you're going to see you go through the long haul with. They're going to follow you through the consumer journey of it all. So I think that, to your exact point, is how, we would
But
share
I
it there.
also want to give people like concrete feedback. I mean, typically you're looking for like what kind of size in downloads a month?
I think we've come to the end of our session. Thank you, everybody on the panel. You can
Thank you.
come up and talk to everybody at the end of it if you have more questions, or to have Janine finish out her answer here. Thank you.